Hello there. I'm here to show you a wonderful place. A veritable Camelot of the nuclear age. Not made by God Almighty, but the working man. You can be a hero by purchasing a residence in a Vault-Tec vault today. Because if the worst should happen tomorrow, the world is going to need you to build a better day after.
The mission of the vaults should be important to everyone. To come up to the surface one day and restart civilization.
Well, now that is a very small drop in a very, very large bucket of drugs.
Everyone wants to save the world. They disagree on how.
War never changes.
What's up, Wastelanders? Boys and girls, prepare to be astounded, bedazzled, and otherwise stupefied.
You talk a lot. Sound funny when you talk like a stupid human.
I am online once again. Tremble, world, before my electric heating coil of doom.
What is up, Wastelanders? Hello and welcome to another episode of Tapes from the Wastes, a Fallout fan podcast bringing you Fallout talk, news, discussion, gameplay, chat, and all things Fallout and Fallout adjacent. I am one of your hosts, KDB, and as always, later in this episode you will be hearing from my co-host, Eric, aka Sulior. Now, it's a big episode. Let's get that out the way, right? The moment has arrived. Today, it is finally time to talk about the Fallout TV show. It's here, it's out, it's been out for just over a week now. And yeah, we are going to be getting into it. So hello to regular listeners, hello to new listeners. I'll give some kind of primer of what to expect from this episode and what we've got coming up before I get into some thoughts about the show. So yeah, there's going to be a lot to say today. So what we're doing, this is going to be basically completely focused on the Fallout show. I don't think there's really any other news to talk about. Maybe I'm overlooking it, but maybe we'll get into the next episode. But effectively, we're going to do 2 episodes on the Fallout TV show, starting with this one today. This episode is going to be kind of like mine and Eric's individual reviews. Now, I use that term review very loosely because we are not journalists, we are not official critics or anything like that. We're of course just fans. So yeah, it's our broad thoughts on the show in general, our personal thoughts and feelings. And then we're going to do a follow-up conversation in like a couple of days. So you may end you may end up with 2 episodes coming out this week. And our follow-up conversation is going to be me and Eric together, and we're going to kind of really get into a lot more of the weeds of the show, specifically talk about specific moments. We're going to have some big conversations more focused on lore as well, and talk to each other about the show and think about the future as well. Because as I record this, it is officially confirmed that Fallout is coming back for a season 2 as well, which actually I think was confirmed before the show even launched, but they're shouting about it again now. So yeah, we've got 2 big episodes coming up, starting with this one. You're going to hear from Eric later, and I'm going to go first. If you don't want to hear from me, please feel free to skip to Eric. Hopefully you do want to hear from me. And yeah, there's just so much to say. So why are we doing it like that? So obviously there is a lot of Fallout talk and chat and content and stuff going out at the moment, and we have been back and forth on our plans on how to cover this show. Originally, my ideal scenario was that the show was going to be dropped weekly and we were going to do weekly episodes on the show. That obviously didn't happen, and we got everything all in one go, and that changed our plans, and we've been umming and ahhing on what to do. At one point we were talking about maybe doing like 3 episodes breaking down the season and then like a final conclusion episode, and what we were going to do. And I've seen, like I said, there's a lot of other creators out there doing their own thing, which is great. I love it. I've talked before about how I will listen to other fans talk about the things I love over and over in the same way. I don't mind. I'm going to be tuning into all of it. I haven't listened to anybody else's thoughts on the show yet, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. And so, I saw what other people were doing, episode by episode breakdowns and full season breakdowns, like real big, deep lore dives and lore ramifications. And I think everybody's kind of got it covered, right? Everybody's got it covered in some way. So I was thinking about what Eric and I can do. And my hope is that the people who listen to our show, a large part of why you listen to it is for people like Eric and myself and, some of the guests we have on. And so, in theory, maybe, hopefully, you're sort of coming for our unique and weird takes on Fallout, I suppose. And I say weird kind of jokingly, you're coming for our personal takes that only we can give. And I'm not going to sit here and say, right, we're doing an episode that's presenting all the lore step by step, every single Easter egg you missed step by step. There's multiple videos and shows and stuff out there for all that kind of stuff. It's not really what we do. We're more of a, kind of bringing it from our own unique view, I suppose, rather than trying not to. We try to avoid retreading too much of what other people do because, and I consume so much of that content from other people. There's so many other great shows out there, as we've constantly talked about and, hyped up. So we eventually decided that we're going to do 2 episodes, each have our own solo individual reviews, and then we're going to get together, have a nice big chat discussion about everything. And so today, as I said, I'll do my thoughts, my kind of review on the show, and then hand over to Eric for his. In terms of spoilers, this episode will be, it's going to have mild spoilers. We've both finished the show. I'm going to do my best. We're both going to do our best to not get like really specific into, talking about the ending and the end game of the show and anything like that. But certainly the initial setup, I think, is kind of free game right now. My thought is, if you listen to this show, you've probably watched the show by now, by the time this episode comes out. So you're probably all caught up. But if you're not, and if you're just curious, this episode is going to be very mild spoilers. There might be a few things that you wouldn't get on Twitter. And I've been extremely silent about my thoughts on Twitter. And other people use that as a way to really talk about it. And that's fine. But I think the feeling is you're listening to this episode, this review. It's not full spoilers. There will be some mild, certainly for the early going and the setups of the characters, and maybe a little bit about their journeys, but nothing about how the show ends. We won't have that on. So those final kind of, what it sets up or doesn't set up and does and doesn't do. So it depends how much you care about that. If you want to be completely clean and you've seen nothing yet, maybe don't listen to this and go watch the show and then come back and listen after. Or if you've seen it, great, then it's fair game. So very, very, very mild spoilers today. And then in the huge breakdown, that's going to be full spoilers. We're going to really get into it there in a couple of days' time. Before I start, I just want to say that I haven't listened to or watched anyone else's reviews or breakdowns or anything yet, because I wanted to go into this kind of I was going to say unclean. I wanted to go into getting my thoughts out clean and not being influenced. I've, of course, seen responses and I've seen the love for the show and stuff like that. And I've seen a few bits, but I've not listened to any extended conversations. I've not listened to any extended reviews. Once I've got this out the way, I'm going to do that. I'm going to soak up everything everyone's saying about it. And I can't wait to do that. So we are here. Let's get into it, I suppose. I mean, let's get the lay of the land. So Fallout, it's definitely having a huge moment right now. I'm not going to spend ages, like I say, talking about the news, but we've seen the effect of this show, which has been massively well received for the most part across the board. And that's mostly from fans and mostly from critics as well. There's always outliers. But broadly, I think the show has achieved well over maybe what many people were expecting. The games themselves have seen huge surges in player numbers just through Steam charts and through sales, physical and digital sales. Just yesterday, I saw that GamesIndustry.biz showed that the top 10 selling games in Europe this past week, of the top 10 selling games, Fallout 4 was number 1. That is unbelievable. This is a 8-year-old game. That's I'm pretty sure that has never happened. I mean, it may have with some. It very rarely happens. This certainly is not a thing that used to ever happen. Old games coming back to the number ones in charts. It's just unheard of. So that is amazing to see, and that's purely down to the response to the show, the success of the show, and then in that top 10, 4 of the top 10, the rest of the Fallout games were in there. I say the rest of the games. So Fallout 3. Fallout New Vegas, Fallout 76, and then Fallout 4 was at number 1. And those previous games were like 10, 9, 8, and 7 respectively. So it's seen a huge surge in player numbers, huge surge back into the conversation. I've had people I know talking to me about the show who have never talked to me about Fallout. I've seen friends online talking about Fallout that have never talked about it. And yeah, it's really having a moment. And this is... I think in all my years that I've been doing podcasting, this is the first time I've seen a real big sort of spike in popularity for something that we cover. You know, I specifically cover Resident Evil on First Aid Spray, Fallout here on Tapes from the Waste, Gears of War on Gears Intel. Now, Resident Evil has definitely had spikes as well. But I mean, that First Aid Spray is a different entity. I do that with a big group of people. We've seen spikes there, but Resident Evil feels like it's evergreen. It's always in the conversation in some way or another. Fallout, it goes up and down, and it's had its peaks and troughs. But I've not seen anything like this since I've been covering Fallout, and this is awesome. I'm so buzzing to talk about the show today. I'm so happy for everyone at Bethesda and involved with the show for the success of the show and the trickle-down success of the games. People discovering how awesome the Fallout community is as well. Yeah, Eric and I are going to talk a bit more about community, I think, in the next episode. But yeah, so that's the sort of lay of the land. That's where we are. The show's been out just over a week. Mostly people are loving it. The games have had incredible success off the back of it. And Fallout feels as cool as ever right now. It's definitely a cultural moment for Fallout. So, by the way, that was my chair squeaking. If you just heard what sounded like a fart, no, it was my chair. It definitely was my chair, I swear. And now I'm protesting too much. It was my chair. I'll try and do it again. Of course, I can't replicate it now. Anyway, right, less fart talk. Let's move on. Like I say, we haven't got our reviews out instantly. I think Eric saw the show before me. I tweeted about how the show was launching on the day that I was going on holiday for 2 days. My family and I went to Chessington World of Adventures. So I couldn't watch the show I couldn't start it until the Friday night. And then I won't go into too much detail, but I had a family emergency as well, which was really crap, and it's really messed up my the past week, which means that I haven't been able to watch. I certainly wasn't able to binge the show, and I wasn't able to speed through it as much as I would have liked. So I've been watching basically an episode a day. I think that's how it's worked out, which I've kind of enjoyed, because I said before about how I'm not really into binging. I'm kind of hard line on binging. I don't think it's good for the show. I don't think it's good for the mind and how you consume it. But that's just my opinion. I mean, other people are different. Maybe I'm just slow and dumb, but I need to take time to let things sink in. And I want to think about what I've seen, let it gestate and let it percolate. And I don't really get that through binging. Plus, I just don't have the time to binge. As a parent, full-time worker and stuff like this, I never have, 3 hours of spare time. I just don't. It just does not happen. So I felt like one of the last people I knew to see the show. I had friends of mine messaging me saying, "Have you seen it? Have you seen it?" I was like, "No, I haven't seen a single second yet." So I was definitely late to the party. But it's fine. That's cool. I've seen it all now, and I've been very clear that I wanted to save my thoughts for this episode. Because I don't think you can really get your thoughts out on Twitter. I think it's very passive and just, I don't know, it loses all nuance and yeah. And I also wanted it to be clear. I think, to be clear, I guess, because there has been some discourse about the show as well, and I'm not going to focus on that too much, but I just want, I think Twitter, you can't fully get across tone and your feelings properly. You know, I'm not an amazing writer, so I can't squish it all down into a tweet. And this is why I do all the shows that I do, because I love talking. I've said before how like Kevin Smith is one of my idols, and he's always fucking talking about everything he's done and stuff like that. And yeah, so I take a lot of inspiration from that. And hopefully you enjoy some of my rambling and talking. So yeah, I wanted to get my thoughts, save my thoughts and feelings for here today on the podcast. So let's get into it. The show is out. I have seen the show. Mild spoilers. Here we go. Firstly, I'm going to start with, I think one of the big questions we all had going into it, and some that were sort of answered maybe even just by the trailers. Does this show get Fallout? Is it true to the universe? Does it honor the feeling, the tone, and the vibe of Fallout, which is probably the most important thing when it comes to adaptations, where other video game adaptations have failed? Usually the biggest complaint is it doesn't feel like Halo, it doesn't feel like Resident Evil, it doesn't feel like Borderlands, or whatever's in the conversation. I think the too long didn't listen version is this show 100% or 99.9% nails the feeling, the tone, the vibe of Fallout. I think that was kind of clear from the second trailer we had as well. Everyone was kind of very taken back that how it meshed together the stuff that everyone's talked about a million times. The combination of humor and violence and dark tones as well. So you've got the weird, whimsical characters, the gore and violence, and then the existential threat of nuclear war and the destruction of the human race and what that means for survivors, and yeah, wasteland and desolation and all that. Combining all those things is something that you think maybe is almost unique to only being possible in a video game. And so I think, Fallout going in, one of the biggest questions is like, how can you pull this off? It's so specific to the video game. It's the video game does things that maybe you just can't really get away with in the TV show. On the whole, after seeing the show, I mean, I am really struggling to find any points where the show isn't nailing the Fallout tone and mashing together those kind of three aspects in ways that I didn't even realize Fallout did. That's the funny one of my biggest takeaways about this show and the tone and what I was being presented with was I was watching it and going, oh yeah, the games are like that. Oh yeah, that is there's characters in the game that do talk like this, and then there's a dark bit here and a gory bit here. And I sort of know that all that stuff happens in the game, but there was something about watching it play out almost beat for beat in the show that I was like, it almost made me get Fallout more. They nailed it that well. Now, I do think this show at times does lean into the dark stuff a bit more than the games. There's a few moments in the show, maybe around sort of some of the family stuff and some of the stuff relating to the Ghoul character and some of the actions he takes, and also maybe some of the actions of a scene involving some raiders as well. However, I think I was trying to imagine those scenes happening within the game. I just think you maybe in Fallout, because it is so quirky, maybe you take them less seriously than you do when you're passively watching a TV show. I do think if TV shows want to be taken seriously as a drama, because it is a drama. That's what this show is. It's it's a sci-fi apocalyptic drama at its core, with humor and violence on top. You have to have drama, and you have to have well-written drama and stuff that we can relate to, that keeps its feet on the ground and pushes you to your limit. So there is definitely an edge to this show. Not all the time, but at times where I was like, "Ooh, that's even darker than the games. That's even worse than the games." So yeah, I did notice that. But apart from those times where it maybe pushes things right to the bone and maybe a bit too far than maybe some of the fun that we were hoping for, it does take it into a darker direction. You think, oh, maybe that's too much for me. I still enjoyed it, and I think a TV show has to do that to have a big impact and to stand alongside, I'm not going to really spend any time comparing this show too much to other video game adaptations. Eric and I are probably going to talk about that a bit. But for a TV show to kind of be taken seriously, and they want it to be taken seriously, and with talented people at the helm, you can have some fun and honor the games, but bring something classy to the table that is edgy, and, I guess to put it bluntly, qualifies for some awards and catches some attention and stuff like that, and doesn't just become, a popcorn thing. I think they really wanted to try and mash that all together in the best way they can, and for the most part, they've done it. While I was watching the show, I just felt like I was in the world. That is largely enhanced by the attention to detail and the production value, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more in a bit. But as for nailing the tone, I've been thinking about it. I think this show, it just does, the characters say things and do things that other TV shows cannot really get away with and don't get away with. And maybe some of the clips that came out before the show, there were some people being really harsh on them, and I think that's out of context. That's what's caused those weird opinions, because they've misunderstood what the show was trying to do. The way that like Lucy delivers her dialogue and stuff. It's like, you're not understanding the point. I mean, she's talking a bit like a character that's been brainwashed in a video game, and I'm not saying that can't happen outside of a video game as well, but yeah, I'm kind of struggling to articulate my point. But maybe for Fallout fans listening to this, you'll know what I mean. Playing a Fallout game is weird. Like, they take liberties, and video games in general do this. Certainly, what I'd like to call video games. They do have fun, and they just sort of, NPCs can be weird and say stuff and behave stuff, but you buy it because it's a video game. I feel like they do stuff in the show. I mean, they even just do video game stuff in this show. Let's take a specific example. And again, I'm not going to get too heavy into specifics, saving that for conversation number 2. The stim packs. The characters get brutally injured in this show. They use a stim pack and they basically go, oh, and they're back to full health. And there's no explanation. It's just that's the rules of this show, because that's the rules of a video game. You use a stim pack, in video games you use Medipack, health pack, and all your wounds are healed and on you go. Yeah, some of the characters take some brutal hits in this, and they use a stim pack and they're right as rain. And you just, certainly I didn't question it, and I haven't really spoken to anybody that maybe doesn't play video games, but I think I've certainly not heard anyone complaining about, oh, they just magically heal themselves, do they? I think people just buy it because of the weirdness that's happening here and the weirdness that the show sets up with the vault. And yeah, it's clear that it's clear that it's not our timeline. So yeah, you can take liberties with suspension of disbelief and stuff, and just a simple thing like how you heal your injuries moving from a video game to a TV adaptation, they've smashed it, and there's no questions about it. The stim packs work here in the show and it's fine. But yes, the balancing of funny dialogue to violence, and violence being done in both dark and horrible ways and fun kind of slapstick ways. It does it both. And like earlier I talked about pushing it to the edge and really getting a bit sort of close to the bone. It does have those dark moments of violence as well, but it also just has fun stuff which, you know, you don't really want a young child watching this, but I think as an adult it's less unsettling because, you know, it's soundtracked by a fun song and it's just chaos and somebody's got a fork in their eye and it's just, yeah. Tone-wise, nailed it. They really nailed it. And for me, that was such a big important thing, and I'm so happy to see they nailed it because it was not a simple task. The whole time I was watching the show, I felt like I was watching a Fallout show, not somebody making a TV show with some Fallout dripped over it, if you know what I mean. They've talked about how they want this to fit within the universe. It's a new story. Everything is canon. And yeah, this feels like... It's funny, they talked about, oh, this is like Fallout 5, and everyone kicked up a fuss before it. It is like the next chapter. It's like the next chapter. This feels like if everything kind of production value-wise and story-wise and stuff was part of a game here, you're not going to find too many complaints because this feels like a Fallout game, but a TV show. Huge thumbs up for how they nail the tone of Fallout. And yeah, they do push it to the edge, and I was surprised to see that, but also I kind of liked that, and that's them trying their own thing. You know, they've got to do something. They've got to try some subtleties, and you know, this is not video game pixels. These are human beings on the screen. You need to see them doing things that human beings might do, if that makes sense, and that involves some dark behavior. Okay, so how about the story? My thoughts on the story. It definitely takes a few influences, I would say, from the games, specifically Fallout 3. The premise is Lucy, the Vault Dweller character, her father is taken from the vault in the first episode. She wants to leave the vault and find him and track him down. And basically on her journey to bring her father back and help bring... order back to her vault because there's kind of a fight for power and stuff like that. She comes across the other characters who each have their own journey as well. So you have Lucy looking for her father. You have Maximus from the Brotherhood of Steel, who he has dreams of becoming a knight. You know, he was rescued by a knight when he was younger. And so you see him trying to find his place. He has big dreams. He thinks he's bigger than the squire that he is. And what's he going to do to achieve those dreams? What kind of person is he going to become? And then we also have the Ghoul character's storyline, which for the most of the show, it's not fully clear what his intentions are. I mean, well, we also have the sort of MacGuffin of the show is a character from the Enclave, a scientist, has something that everybody wants that's going to bring, whoever has this thing that he has is going to bring, they're going to be able to control the wasteland. And Lucy crosses the paths with this man, the Ghoul does, and so does Maximus. And there's a thing that he has that the big bad of the show wants, or at least maybe what we think is the big bad, because, and that's another thing I'm still thinking about, who are the bad guys of this show? It is not clear by the end of the story, and that I love. So yeah, we have sort of three characters searching for something, and then a big MacGuffin in the middle that the people who want all the power want as well. And of course the unlikely heroes, if you like, stumble across this thing, and it's about traveling across the map as you do in a game and getting to your destination and completing your quest. It's here in the show for these three characters. So the story, I think, is very well written, because whenever a show has to, a bit like Game of Thrones, was very kind of sequestered off. Is that the right word? Sequestered or sequenced off, where the characters are, they very much have their own stories that are playing alongside each other and cross paths and stuff like that. But you hop around, you spend time with them doing certain things. It's not just one group all moving to the same goal. It's different goals, how you're going to get there, and what you're going to do to get past each other. And Game of Thrones kind of does that as well in its big, fight for power and the dreams that these characters have. So it's a bit like that, and the structure of the story is mostly linear. We do have flashbacks in the story to time before the bombs dropped. I think a bit like how the Last of Us TV show had like cold opens or jumps back to times before, the apocalypse. This show does that too. I think they are some of the strongest moments of the show. Again, not just going to dissect all the details, but it's cool. It mainly revolves around the ghoul character, which you've seen in the trailers. You've seen that Walton Goggins is, we see him all ghouled up, and we see him in his non-ghouled format, non-ghouled form. And yeah, so the story is following them on the journey, and I think it's very difficult to juggle those multiple storylines. You can often have problems with that, and stuff can become convoluted. But I feel like it does very well at sticking to these three characters and the stuff that is happening around them and their own journeys. It's purely, and this is always so important, and it's what some sci-fi and I guess horror and all the big idea shows or big genre shows maybe fall away from sometimes. The story is fully about the character development. What paths are these three that we're along with? What are they going on, and what are they going to do along these paths? And you're along, and that's what the story is. It's unfolding and it's following them. Effectively, when I'm thinking about it now, and I might be wrong because I've only watched through the show once. I think every scene, apart from some stuff to do with the scientist, which is very brief, is focused on those characters. They are the key thing happening in a scene. I don't think there is ever a scene away from those characters. I think they are always there. They are always featuring in it somehow. So it's not jumping to some random thing or some other support character. Well, actually, there is a support character. Yeah, now that I think about it, and we do get some stuff with him, but I think he's the only one. He's shall we say, a replacement squire that comes along. But for the most part, yeah, it's really about when we're jumping from scene to scene. Okay, you're with Lucy now, or you're with the ghoul now, or you're with Max now, and it's what they're doing. And then sometimes they cross paths, sometimes they're all in scenes together. I think there's maybe only like 2 points in the show where all three of them are in a scene together, but it chops and changes. Sometimes two of them are together and they're on their own and stuff like that. So yeah, so that's what the story is. I mean, the MacGuffin idea, we all need this thing and we'll control the wasteland. It's fine, but what I like is it's not like really something like Infinity War where it feels like the Infinity Stones and the Gauntlet take up far too much of the time for me, and it's more about what that glove can do, and less about the characters. Here, it's, yes, everyone needs this thing. We're not really sure what it does, but it's more about the characters and how they're going to get it and what they're going to do and stuff. So that's the story, really, and it's set across, I guess, like a few days. Like I say, it's a little bit linear, but with flashbacks to give some context to the ghoul's character and some of the overarching themes about Vault-Tec and the war and the bombs and why did they drop and all this kind of stuff. So I think it's very well written. I think the story is paced unbelievably well. The episodes are mostly an hour long. I think there's a couple of slightly shorter ones and some that are a little bit longer. I'm trying to think if there was at any point I felt like it was dragging, and I'm really struggling. And I should say I'm doing this completely note-free as well. I am just kind of freestyling this off the top of my head. So I might be getting some things factually wrong or whatever. I'm misremembering stuff, but I think broadly I'm staying on course here. Pacing is great, never really getting bored. So yeah, the story is the characters and what they're doing, and there's definitely mythology in there and stuff that connects to the canon of the games and the lore of the games. But this idea of finding your dad and making the wasteland the best it can be, these themes that are in Fallout 3 in a big way, they are definitely here in Fallout 4. and it's who's right. I think so. There is a line that was in the trailer that Maximus says. It's just say something like, "Oh, it's the same old story. Everyone wants to save the world. They just can't agree on how." And that is the show. You don't know who really is who's right and who's wrong, and that's fantastic. And that's a very kind of trendy thing that shows and movies do these days. You know, we kind of moved past the pure babyface and heel stuff that we used to maybe get from the 80s and 90s, and you know, before then. And it's very much about grey areas. You know, you think about Game of Thrones, you think about Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, and you know, Boardwalk Empire and The Sopranos, like all these huge TV shows. It's about grey area characters. Should you be rooting for these people? Who should you be rooting for? And that is a huge part of the story here in Fallout, and I really, really enjoyed that. It felt very classy, very edgy, good questions, and yeah, just I loved being along for the ride. The characters themselves, as I mentioned, we have the three main characters. I suppose if I had to pick a favourite, I do really like Lucy. I think Lucy is kind of presented as the quote-unquote good guy. She has her moments, and she has her naivety, and she has her stupidity, as do both the Ghoul and Maximus as well. But yeah, there's not too much really to say about the characters because, like I say, that they are the story. I think the Ghoul character is very interesting. I think by the time the show had wrapped, I feel like maybe the Ghoul's character arc is more, because this is the thing, you know, you follow the arcs of the show and the character arcs of the show. It feels like the Ghoul's is far less not complete. He's definitely got the arc that is most open-ended by the end of the show. He has a big piece of dialogue towards the end which tells you a lot more about his motivations, but you know, Lucy's motivations are very clear. She's looking for her dad and wants to maybe find out what happened to her mother and bring peace and order back to her vault. Maximus, like I say, has big dreams, wants to be a knight, wants to be, you know, respected, and feels like he has a lot to offer and feels like he isn't being given opportunities to do that. And the Ghoul is, for the most part of the show, it just feels like he's a mercenary. He's on a job maybe to earn some money and survive. He's clearly been around for a long, long time, and we're not really sure how or why. Because, yeah, he's shown in flashback sequences 200 years ago. But yeah, as it goes along, it feels like, God, he's a real bastard of a character, and he's doing some really dark stuff, and he has his sort of, you know, flip side moments, but constantly he's doing things that make you go, oh my God, like this guy, he's the asshole character. You know, when you think, all right, I'm going to do an asshole character in Fallout, that's the Ghoul here. And there's almost no subtlety to it, and no kind of questions until you start to see that he's fighting against something, and he's kind of fighting against the Ghoul disease and this concept that, and this is a mild spoiler, that as a Ghoul, your sort of days are numbered, and you might turn into a feral Ghoul if you're not careful, and if you maybe don't get some medicine that you need. And that's kind of revealed relatively early on in the show. So you see him struggling with that. You see that's his struggle, but it's still kind of unclear. Why is he getting involved in all this? Is it just for money? Towards the end, some bigger reveals about his motivation become much more clear, but it's definitely like it feels like if these are the three main characters of this show, and they are all three main characters, it feels like maybe Lucy is most front and center. It feels like season 2, the Ghoul would absolutely be front and center, which is fine. And it's like, I hope they kind of do that. They could maybe go on like a 3 to 5 season arc, have season 1 Lucy kind of leading the charge, season 2 the Ghoul leading the charge, Maximus in season 3. You know, if all these characters make it to season 3, who knows? And kind of learn more about their stories that way. And I do like that they're taking their time. I'm not a fan of cliffhangers. There is a very mild cliffhanger at the end of this show, but I think it does so well in the lead up to that, and we get enough questions answered and just enough setup as a cliffhanger that leaves you wanting more, and from the characters and from the story. But yes, from those are the three main characters. Like I say, Lucy feels front and center. I feel like she's my favorite. I feel like she, like I say, she's such a weird character. She does things that other lead characters don't do because of who a Vault Dweller is and how they see the world and how they perceive the world. She does stuff in the first 20 minutes, half an hour of the show where you're like, oh my God, like, are you really doing this? And then, but you have to put yourself in her frame of mind and why she's doing it. And yeah, it's some of it is hard to watch. It's hard to look at, but I think it all makes logical sense. And her motivations are clear. Max's motivations are clear. The Ghoul, yeah, they were unclear. He had the most questions about him, which I did really love, but there's a lot of setup, I think, for season 2. So I guess I've kind of mild spoiled that he's probably around for season 2, and yeah, which is fine. Other characters, yeah, so like the scientist Enclave character. Before I get to him, I just want to say quickly lead performances, because like we should talk about that, or I should talk about that. These three leads, okay, the acting across this show, across this board, is unbelievably high quality. The three leads are very, very, very good. Lucy in particular. I mean, Walton Goggins he's never done anything bad in terms of a performance in his life, right? I could do a whole episode talking about the acting talent on display here. The casting, so good. I have one very specific huge gripe with the casting, and I'm going to talk about that now. Out of nowhere, Michael Rappaport appears as a character. He completely took me out of the show. I get why he was cast, because of the kind of shtick that he does. I did not like that. It's the only point in the show I felt removed from the universe, and I really wish they would have cast someone else to do for that role. And yeah, I'm not a massive fan of Michael Rappaport, and that's his name, right? Am I saying that correctly? Yeah, I think I am. I feel like he's a holdover from the 90s and early 2000s, and yeah, I don't know, maybe he was just mates with someone in casting or something. There's not going to be a lot of complaining and criticizing from me in these review episodes, but yeah, big black mark for me. It's the only moment that took me out, and thankfully he's only in it for one scene. Yeah, I just wish they had cast someone else. Because yeah, the rest of them are for the most part unknowns, and of course Walton Goggins is an unknown, and Michael Emerson is an unknown, and Kyle MacLachlan is not unknown. But I think it's sort of managed in a way where, you know, you're not taken out of the world. And Walton Goggins is such a good character actor, and of course he's in makeup most of the time. It doesn't really take you out. But yes, acting across the board from all three, smashed it out the park. Lucy McLean. So it's funny because we have Hank McLaughlin and then Lucy McLean as the character, right? And I get them mixed up. Ella Purnell, who plays Lucy, she is. I've seen a few people sort of add. I can't take credit for this. I've seen people describe her as Ned Flanders in The Wasteland, which is absolutely fucking amazing. And that's like, it's such a good. Yeah, it's just such a good kind of correlation to make. She is this well-meaning, naive, slightly hidden dark side. Yeah, she is so good. It's one of the best performances I've seen in a show in a long time. Yeah, it's up there. And I know she's doing really good work elsewhere as well. Walton Goggins, like I said, he turns anything he touches to gold. And then Aaron, what's his name? Aaron Clifton, is that right? Aaron Clifton. Let me just quickly have a look on the website. Aaron Clifton Moten. Is that how you say his name? I hope that's right. He plays Maximus, and he's this very shy, neutral, in the middle, punching above his weight character. yeah, and he nails that as well. And I've seen him talk in interviews, and like again, he's not just playing himself. Like Kyle MacLachlan is kind of just playing himself, and that's fine. But the three leads, they are fully into these characters, and they each have their character builds. I've seen people talking about character builds, and I think the official Fallout account has put out their stats as well, which I love, and it all makes sense. It all adds up. And this, again, just tying back to how does this show get Fallout and how does it nail it, you can see conversations have been had about all this stuff, because it's coming through even when you may not even realize it's coming through. This stuff about character stats and, you know, their strength and intelligence and endurance and charisma and luck. It's all coming through with these characters and their performances and the way the show is written. So 3 leads, absolutely brilliant. There are multiple supporting characters. This has just occurred to me when I talked earlier about I don't think any scene happens without the 3 leads. That is a mistake, because of course we do have stuff back in the vault with Norm, Lucy's brother. So he's kind of like the 4th lead, I would say. He's a supporting character, but he gets a lot of screen time in the vault. So it's almost like there's 4. They're the 3 leads. He's very, very much a support lead. So yeah, I did kind of misspeak there, because there is all this awesome stuff back in the vault which doesn't involve Lucy and Maximus and the Ghoul, because some of those characters inside the vault and outside the vault, some of the kind of dodgy characters, we see some other ghouls. We do see other ghouls. There are multiple one-liners from these characters that just floored me, specifically with some of the guys in the vault, some of the guys and girls in the vault. I'm using guys kind of, you know, free of gender, if you like. They all, it feels like anyone who has dialogue, it's not wasted. It's there for a moment of thought-provoking question, or definitely a moment of levity and some humor, which the show absolutely leans into. Chet in the vault, loved him. And yeah, Norm is great. Some of the vault kind of power play they have to find out who's going to be the new overseer. And we do get to spend time in another vault as well. Slightly mild spoiler, but there's some stuff in there. Some of it was in the trailer. I'm not going to talk more about that. But just generally across the board, the thing about Fallout is when you're playing the game, that's what happens. You stumble across these characters in the vaults and wastelands and wherever, you know, faction sites, who are just weird, right? Weird, quirky, say things that are just nuts and wild, and a lot of them are kind of grumpy, and, you know, some of them are freakishly happy. It's all here across the characters, and you can probably hear me smiling as I'm saying this, because it just made me, as I was watching, reappreciate Fallout. And as I say, I've said this before, a long-suffering Resident Evil fan having to watch those adaptations, parts of me die sometimes every time I watch those adaptations. There's some good in there. There's some good in those adaptations. Very little. Parts of me die that the people who made the shows aren't properly honouring it. And I don't mind new universes and new takes and new styles. I'm all for that. But I think when you just completely get away and you've got nothing, which some of the Resident Evil stuff did, that's when it's kind of hard to watch. Here, it feels like even down to the supporting characters, to posters on the wall, to set dressing, and yeah, it's unbelievable. I mean, Amazon money is a big part of this, 100%. You can't do this without a big budget. To get that good casting and to get that good production design and to get that attention to detail. They worked on the show for what, like 2 years as well, which is why it's going to be a while before we get a season 2. Characters, how can you complain? I give my complaint about Rappaport. That is really my own complaint. I mean, I want to rewatch the show, and I'm probably going to come out of a rewatch thinking like, okay, I didn't really like this one as much or whatever. But I'm very much there is some recency bias, but I spent time with this show over a week. It's not a single day, right? I have been thinking about it quite a lot. Really strong characters, especially those leads, and hilarious supporting characters. So yeah, moving on. I'm just going to quickly now move on before I start to wrap things up soon. Some of the visuals and design and audio. So as I've sort of hinted at already, production value, money, it's all on display. Huge kudos for the large amount of practical sets, minimal green screen. There's a lot of CG in this show, and there's a lot of visual effects, or should I say CG visual effects. There is a lot of practical stuff, and it just helps sell the world. It helps sell the idea. It makes the show richer, deeper in texture. I hope these production designers and these art designers and coordinators and lore coordinators, people on set walking around making sure stuff was right. And there are things you could nitpick at and say, well, that's a bit different or that's not right. I just think, I think you got to let that go. I think broadly, on a whole, this show is doing so much for Fallout and paying homage in the best way it possibly can. It's unbelievable they've pulled it off this well, especially creating a new story as well. This isn't a retread of an already existing story. This isn't a retelling of a game. This is a new story within the world, and it feels and looks like it. The costumes, the sets, the hairstyles, the weapons, the locations, so Philly is like the megaton equivalent, or what's the one in Fallout 4? Diamond City in Fallout 4. So Philly is, and that's Filly, not Philly as in Philadelphia. The show is set in California, in case those weren't clear. In case that wasn't clear to anyone. There's a little town called Philly, which is made up of like old airplane parts and like all the junk. It's like being in like a Diamond City or a Megaton, right? They've got the shops, they've got the doctor, and they've got the merchants. I know I said shops and merchants, but yeah, you get what I'm saying. Residents, and they the vaults, just the lining on the doors, the screws, the nuts and bolts, the chairs. I was spotting lamps and going, oh, that is the lamp from the show. The wallpaper. It's I cannot overstate how. Okay, I am a little bit frustrated with some of the complaints about this show. Some people are coming off as spoilt. There's stuff that you can not like, that's fine. But I feel like I'm involved in a lot of gaming communities that have had adaptations that have gone wrong. That I've talked about Resident Evil. Some of you Fallout fans, you don't know how lucky you are right now. And maybe some of you are Resident Evil fans as well. Maybe some of you are Silent Hill fans or Gears of War fans or whatever. You don't know how lucky you are. They have put in. This reminds me of like the work that went into like the Lord of the Rings trilogy. So it's a quick aside. So when they made those that original Lord of the Rings trilogy, they had like months and sometimes years of production design time where they handcrafted weapons and costumes and stuff. And Weta were proud of all this work and everything. And it really shows. And it's why those films are still so incredible today. With the Hobbit trilogy, they didn't have the same amount of time. They had a lot of money to try and speed it up, but I've heard the people from Weta talk about there was no taking pictures in front of their 500 finished shields and stuff like that, because they were on an assembly line, make to set, and it was funneling through, and there was no opportunity to slow down and take their time. I'm sure the production was relatively fast on this show, but this is what happens when you get time and money. There's someone planning and getting it. The amount of work involved to get just the vault set put together. It's 1,000 people, when it's all said and done. This is right from the planning and sketching stage, people talking about it in meetings, to the builders, the electricians, then on the day, the lighting, the camera, all the grips and everybody. This is no small operation, and yeah, it really, really shows. It really shows. And, there's Easter egg after Easter egg after Easter egg, and I've seen people spotting them and sharing them. There's stuff that I've probably missed, and I just think in terms of visuals, I mean, okay, so there's a couple of ways to look at visuals. There's the sets and the production design and stuff. It's spot on. It's Fallout through and through. Huge raises to everybody. Obviously, the director is a big part of that and ensuring and helping. And Todd Howard was heavily involved in the show. I'm sure he had lots of notes to make sure that they got things right. The fact that they were even able to just bring the power armor to life as well is an achievement in itself. It's just tick, 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 tick after tick. You know, round of applause. We can only dream of this stuff when it comes to adaptations for fans. You can get nitpicky all you want, and that's fine. I just think it's not worth it because the good dwarfs any little issue you might have. You're allowed those issues. I'm very good at letting them go and just kind of getting on with my life and appreciating what the show is doing. And again, this is no slight on anyone. It's fine. I nitpick stuff all the time. I'm just trying to retain some perspective here and give my perspective, because I have seen some discourse about the show. I haven't listened to any big reviews or anything, but I see the tweets, and yeah, it's like, oh, this shouldn't be here and that shouldn't be there. It's just, but what about all the stuff that is right? Okay. So yeah, production design, great. Visuals in terms of cinematography and lighting, it's about as good as it gets. I mean, this is very high quality cinematography. And I'll just jump back to some of that stuff that I saw before this show came out, with people saying, oh, have they ever been to film school? I guess they don't teach blocking anymore. It's just, I think those people have crawled back into their hole, because this is about as good as it gets for a TV show. I thought it was shot beautifully. We had vistas, we had tight corridors, we had claustrophobia, we had, this is not a network TV show of old where everything is kind of confined to 2 locations and 6 characters, and they don't really have any budget, and it's spread across 24 episodes. This is modern TV. This is the golden age of TV. Yeah, the 8 to 10 episodes model that we kind of live with now. And yeah, this is filmmaker Jonathan Nolan. This is bringing kind of a cinematic approach to a TV show that we do see lots of TV shows do this. And I think Fallout, I've seen some of the Halo show, and I know I said I wasn't going to compare stuff. The Halo show is nowhere near as cinematic as this. It's got some good stuff. This maintains a level of quality across both the modern, the present timeline and the flashbacks. It maintains style, the filmic look, the depth of field, and I'm a student of film, and so I love this stuff, and I love looking at this stuff and tearing apart everything in the frame. There were so many times where TV shows kind of blow their load, maybe in the beginning or at the end, and then there's a lot of ropey bits in the middle. No, not here. Did feel like maybe there was some location reuse, which it's fine. Like, it's fine. They dressed things enough. There was a lot of stuff in what felt like the same strip of sand, which is fine. They dressed it enough and changed it enough that they made it work. And I think CG is obviously so good these days. And I mean, like, background CG. So when you see skylines, it's very easy for stuff to be comped into the shot and look real. There's a shot of a Vault-Tec building in a flashback sequence. Just getting the Vault-Tec emblem on a skyscraper is something that would have been really difficult to make work in the past. Now it's seamless, and they obviously didn't build it. It's just a CG building or a matte painting, and it's very high quality VFX, like matte painting and backgrounds. So just like I say, the vistas, you got some. We have different, I'd say, biomes. We've got the town, we've got the vault, we've got desert, we've got sort of swampy areas as well. ruins. There's more to be seen, I guess, in future, but they got a nice mixture, and I think everything is shot in a way which feels, most of the time you're right there in it with the characters, but then we get some incredible like Apocalypse Now shots of the Brotherhood of Steel and stuff like that, and then obviously the opening sequence is chilling, beautiful, terrifying. It's just, yeah, incredibly cinematic camera work and lighting, colourful and vibrant as well. This is not a let's make everything yellow and green, which they kind of could have, you know, that could have been up for discussion. Fallout is very, very yellow and green. Obviously Fallout 4 is a bit brighter. You look at New Vegas and Fallout 3, they've got a tint. This show doesn't really have a tint. It's got a broad color, vibrant color palette. There's lots of the blues and yellows for Vault-Tec, lots of red, lots of popping red for the blood and gore. We do have the yellows for the, you know, for Shady Sands and stuff like that. Yeah, there's a lot in there with the colors, and visually it looks good. And sort of touched on CG, a lot of matte painting and background extension, which is basically flawless. And then obviously we have a big part of it are some of the creatures and the mutations. And I heard some weird criticism of, okay, so mild spoiler, it's in the trailer, there's a gulper in this show, right? And I heard some people I quite respect saying it looks bad, it looks really bad, it looks really stuck on. And I thought, okay, that's going to be a problem when we get to that scene. I don't know what that person was watching. The CG does not look bad. Again, not to sort of go, oh, I know this and I know that, whatever. I worked at an animation studio for like nearly 6 years. I was very involved with VFX. I like to think I've got an eye for the stuff that, and some people don't care. Some people literally don't care about this stuff. I notice it, and I notice when I think stuff isn't done properly or when it's rushed, particularly with a composition. So that's when you can have a very good CG model and it's animated well. But if it doesn't sit within the scene, you know, with the lighting and the shadow, it's pointless. No complaints. That if you wanted to get really picky, I thought there was the shot when one of the Brotherhood of Steel, so Max in the Brotherhood of Steel, no, not Max, so yeah, Maximus is rappelling down from a helicopter with Knight Titus. Some of the comp there looked a bit ropey. That's like the only shot in the entire show where I noticed it looked very CG, and I think it was a mix of trying to make it look real, and the actors can only move so fast. When the Brotherhood of Steel character gets flipped over by the Yao Guai as well, that's another monster in the show. There was one shot I was like, oh, that looked a bit ropey, but that's it. That's like 5 seconds of this entire show where the rest of the time, and there's me nitpicking, right? There's some of you nitpicking about other stuff you didn't like about the production design. There's me nitpicking about the CG. It just doesn't matter at the end of the day. So I'm going to stop talking about those nitpicks, but because, yeah, most of the time it looks awesome. The Gulper looks awesome. The Rad Roaches look great. And what's the other? Yeah, so the Yao Guai looks great. Some other bits and bobs of CG and stuff in there, and which, you know, your mileage may vary, but I think the standard was incredibly high with the CG and the effects. There's a lot of gore effects as well. Obviously, you think Vats, bloody mess, and all this kind of stuff. It's in there. It's in there in droves, and there's some practical gore, and we see this more and more these days. There's a lot of, where they used to use blood squibs practically all the time. I think there's, because when I'm watching, and I try not to do this too much, I'm like, oh, was that a practical squib? Was that CG? There's sometimes I was like, okay, that's obviously CG blood and CG gore. I think there was a few practical squibs in there, which is nice to see, and some real, quote unquote, real blood. A nice mix, lots of practical effects and CG effects. The mutations look good. There's stuff they held back on, which I think was also good and important. They do well at making everything look like it is in the universe. Nothing looks pasted on. Yeah, huge thumbs up. What else? Audio. So I'm getting closer to wrapping up my thoughts now across the board. Audio. I mean, from the moment the show opens, you are hearing songs from the radio stations in the game. So there's two main ways to look at audio in this game. Of course, there's sound effects as well, but if we just think about music and soundtrack, so there's needle drops, which are the songs, the pre-existing songs and soundtracks from the Fallout games, and songs that aren't used in the games as well. And then there is soundtrack, which is composed by Ramin Djawadi, who is on the up and up. It feels like he's chasing Michael Giacchino for becoming one of the biggest composers in Hollywood, and he's done a lot of stuff I love. He's also worked on Gears of War, so he's clearly a gaming fan. He also worked on Game of Thrones, Ramin Djawadi. So we have a mix. So talk about needle drops first. They're all here, and I love that the money was spent to license this, because this is something that some other gaming adaptations haven't done. I think the Mario movie is one of the best examples of a soundtrack taking music from the games and working it into the movie in basically every possible way. There's some needle drops in the Mario movie which I didn't think worked, like Take On Me, for example. And then something like the Sonic the Hedgehog movies, for me, and I'm a huge Sonic fan, they hardly did any of that. Like, and I'm not talking needle drops, but some of the Sonic music, it's so sparingly used in the movie, and instead they went for mostly new stuff and newly composed stuff, whereas I felt they could have had more influence from the iconic music of the games from Sonic the Hedgehog and put that into the movies. They do it a bit here and there, but just wasted opportunity for stuff that have such iconic music. It's clear with Fallout, one of its iconic factors is the music, is the 50s, 60s, whatever, music and songs. We know them, we love them. They're all here. Some of them are used multiple times. And then we have new ones. Like I think there's a Johnny Cash one that's used that I've never heard in the games, which is used really well here for a scene with Maximus. So yeah, you're singing along, smiling, at least I was, every time they're coming on. Not singing out loud, nobody needs to hear that. I'm so happy they made sure that, some might even say they've overhammed it a little bit, because it is basically every other scene that there is one of these songs. And then you could say maybe it overshadows the soundtrack and the score, the composed score a little bit, which I think it probably does. But that's not to say the score isn't good. There's a few key moments where it really does sing, and it does really well. And then obviously it takes some of the themes from the game, music themes from the game, kind of reinterprets them and brings them here to screen. And I'm sort of talking about this, and I'm like, I don't know what else I could have wished for. I've mentioned the kind of gripes with Sonic the Hedgehog, but then how good Mario is. It just feels like here I don't want to say perfect balance. All the songs are there were good. I feel like maybe the score does get slightly overshadowed by the soundtrack, but does that matter? Because I think the soundtrack and the needle drops are such a big part of it that it's like, okay, yeah, the score is supporting, which is fine. But yes, again, very, very mild spoilery, but so the song We 3, everyone knows it, We 3, that is used towards the very end in a sequence which pretty much brought tears to my eyes. Unbelievable placement. Some of them feels like, well, maybe they've just kind of, they do think about what songs they're using. Some of them maybe have more meaning than others, but the use of We 3 is possibly my favorite in this show. And it's, again, just links back to how considered and classy and thought out this all is. This is something special, and I want to buy a physical copy of the soundtrack, and I am going to rewatch the show again, and I'm looking forward, because I actually watched it by myself. My wife didn't watch it with me, but she's going to watch it with me. So much joy in that music. I love listening to those songs outside of Fallout. Many of us do. Eric and I have talked about it on the show before. Yeah, the music it's all there. It's all there and more. And I'm so pleased they nailed it, because that vibe, the retro 50s, retro futuristic, what is it? Retro 50s, futuristic, I forget what the term is, and all that music from the 50s and 60s and stuff. Yeah, massive Vault Boy thumbs up. And in Eric and I's follow-up discussion, in a follow-up episode, we're probably going to talk about other bits of music and what we liked and what scenes we liked. We're really going to dive into more details, and that'll be full-blown spoilers, as I've said. And yes, and Eric is going to be here in just a moment. I'm just going to wrap up and give a bit of a conclusion on my broad overall thoughts of the show, kind of as things stand now. So, yeah, after being with the TV show this past week, and through thinking about everything I've talked about today, I think people are gonna roll their eyes. I know they are, but I've always said my opinions are as crazy as they can be sometimes. I'm just honest to my own feelings, right? I think this isn't just recency bias. This is very, very possibly the best video game adaptation ever made. And I know what you're all thinking. And again, I've talked about trying not to compare. There's many of you out there shouting about The Last of Us. I know. I really fucking loved The Last of Us as well. Just indulge me a second. I think this is very possibly the best one when it comes to video game adaptations. And I don't want that to be a disservice to the show, because it's also a great TV show. But yeah, I think when this show was announced, I was definitely nervous. I think both because video game adaptations don't have a great track record, as we know. Despite a few recent ones being much better. I mentioned Last of Us, Mario, whatever you think of the childlike story of Mario, it's kind of done well. Detective Pikachu, there's another good one. Sonic the Hedgehog's not really what I wanted, but again, they've done incredibly well. But when the show was announced, bad track record of video game adaptations, and as I mentioned at the start, what Fallout does in terms of tone and characters is so weird and unique to Fallout that getting it on screen felt like a mountain that I'm not sure anyone could climb successfully. News started to kind of trickle out about who was making it, with Jonathan Nolan being involved, and then the casting. When the casting was announced, my intrigue really started to rise, as it felt like, okay, some serious money is being spent here because they are recruiting top talent to be involved with the show. And then we had some initial set leaks and stuff, which they looked decent. And though it's always hard to put too much stake into leaks, and because it's out of context and stuff, but everyone was like, hey, look, there's some of those sets. That looks good. The first trailer arrived and it was like, okay, maybe we're onto something here. It was a teaser trailer, and it was like, there was some big glimmers of hope, and I started to get quite excited. But I think when that second trailer dropped, that was a turning point for my excitement for this show, and it essentially put to rest any concerns I had, and I was ready. I was fully ready. So, yeah, been with the show of the week. Only watched it through once. I do need to watch it again, but as things stand, not just the recency bias, I've been thinking about other shows. I've been thinking about this, what I've seen, and I think it's possibly the best video game adaptation. It's certainly top 3. It's without a doubt, it's top 3. Because of all those reasons I've talked about, and because of, one of the biggest reasons for me thinking this is the best video game adaptation, it's standing on its own with a new story. It is not retelling an existing one. It's giving us new things in the existing universe, and it's honoring that universe in ways that other video game adaptations have failed to do, for me personally. And I think that just cannot be understated and undersold. Like, if you want to put things side by side, it's like, this ain't no retelling. This is another chapter, and holy shit, does it fit along with the other volumes and other chapters, if you like. And not only is it a very well done adaptation of a game, it's just a very high quality TV show on its own merit. I think the cast and the production value are a large part of that. I think this show does not become the smash hit it has just because it's a good video game adaptation. That's not possible. It gets these responses from people who aren't video game fans, and it's welcoming people into the world in the most accessible way without saying, oh, you have to have played the games to get something out of this. And look, playing the games and being a Fallout fan will definitely give you, I don't want to say advantage, that's the wrong word. You'll get some stuff out of this that people who aren't exposed to Fallout won't, but it doesn't mean that the show in of itself is better or worse because of that. But yes, it's very accessible, and I think these characters all, have something for people to find interesting or unsettling, and the characters are what carry the show. And it's wild when you think about this being something that includes the monsters and the guns and the themes of the end of the world. The people here are really why this show is doing so well, and I've seen so many people hyping up the cast, and it's just, that's no accident. That is not an accident. This is a very clear, it's very clear that this has been a very considered approach when creating this show, and for me, that's why it's probably the best game adaptation, which, yes, game adaptations, that's a low bar, but even with that, it's just one of the most enjoyable shows I've watched in the past decade, and there's been a lot of good TV in recent years. This is as good as any genre show out there that you could expect, any sci-fi, horror sort of show. I know there's not a great deal of horror, but it's sci-fi drama, really. It's as any good as the genre popcorny stuff, but it takes it to the next level, and it's got that class and style that I've talked about. And I'm so happy that my beloved Fallout is being picked up by new fans and returning fans, maybe lapsed fans after Fallout 76, and this really feels like the beginning of a new branch of the Fallout tree, and with so many possibilities for the future. And yeah, one of, if not the best video game adaptations. It's superb. It's a fantastic watch. It will make you laugh, squirm, possibly cry if you're me. Yeah. I'm really excited to speak with Eric more about our favourite moments and the lore, because there's, the ramifications for the lore. There's parts of this show that I just haven't even touched with a barge pole today. Yeah. And, there's been a lot of conversation and discourse about that, about the lore and locations and how they're there and why they're not there and where we're possibly going in the future. And we're going to get all into that on the follow-up episode. So, yeah. Please look out for that. It's coming very soon. It'll be here within the next week. This is a two episodes in this week we're doing for the show. So, yeah, from me, big double Vault Boy thumbs up. I am beaming after watching this show. I'm radiating joy. I had one small complaint, which I gave earlier. And, there is recency bias, and I'm a fanboy as well, but it's nice to know lots of other people are enjoying it as well. I can't wait to watch it again. I really can. There's so much more to be said about this show. I'm looking forward to hearing everyone else's reviews, because now, like I say, I wanted to say spoiler free, and I had to remove myself from the Tapes Twitter account for a few days because unfortunately there were loads of spoilers online, which is a real shame. But I wanted to say spoiler free going into my review, and now I'm going to go soak up and see what everyone's saying. I can't wait. But yes, you've suffered from me long enough, and I've mentioned Eric, so I am now going to hand over to him for his overall thoughts on the Fallout TV show. I'll be back at the end for the outro. Take it away, Eric.
Thank you so much, Kelsey. And I, for one, and I'm sure the listeners would agree with me on this, that listening to you is never a struggle. Seriously, dude. Come on. Yes, thank you for all of those thoughts. A lot of them I'm probably going to echo with this. But if I could sum up the Fallout TV show within a couple of words, it would be holy shit. Yeah, fucking amazing show. I'm going to get into it as we go along, but yeah, first reactions, watching, especially that first episode, like, oh my God, so good. So Sorry if my voice sounds a little rough right now. I'm still kind of waking up. I'm recording this fairly early in the morning for me, so we can get this out to you guys. Because it's been a week, and yeah, a lot of people have given their reactions to this already. I have sat down with the Modus Files crew. They did a live watch along of the first episode for the Fallout TV show, live with the whole cast, well, most of the cast, and some of the listeners. We did that through Discord, and I wasn't there for the actual recording part of it, but I was there for the beginning and the end. So I was able to chat with some of the cast I'd never actually spoken to before. That was really fun, and I hope we can do that again soon. And I also sat down with Dawn, Sassy Lady from the Fallout Roundtable, and we went through the first episode. So this is not my first time getting my thoughts about the show out there. But yeah, this is probably the first time that I've gone through in this kind of detail. As Kelsey mentioned, we're going to be mostly just giving broad strokes, and then get into the nitty gritty in the next episode. But yeah, it's amazing how much they nailed the Fallout feel in this show, if you will. But as Kelsey also mentioned, I have absolutely loved seeing the interest in Fallout at a fever pitch right now. All of the games being on sale and everybody seemingly just hopping in and playing some sort of Fallout, whether it's Fallout 4, seen some people playing Fallout 3, Fallout 76, I play daily, and it's crazy how the servers have become mostly new people. And also seeing the community just completely embrace them. Kelsey said that the Fallout community is the absolute best, and I 100% agree with that. I've even seen some Reddit posts where these people were just amazed at how friendly and helpful the people in Fallout 76 are. And how, I've done this myself where I'll see somebody, level 5, 10, 15, something like that, on the map. And, excuse me, like the other night, there was this guy who was trying to solo Grafton Day that was level 10. I show up, they're still in their birthday hat, like their little party hat, trying to take on a horde of super mutants and a Grafton monster. So, of course, I helped him with that, and then, come here, I got a bunch of shit for you. So, I, dropped a bunch of plans and stim packs and things like that. But that's what the Fallout community does for people, And, yeah, it's been really great to see. And I've had friends who aren't gamers at all that have called or texted me and was like, "Hey, I'm watching the Fallout TV show. I know you're a fan. This is awesome. I get it now." So, yeah, so great to see this. And it's like, see? I'm a fan for years. What did I tell you? But it doesn't matter if you are an old fan or a new fan. We're all Wastelanders here, and welcome if you are a new listener. I've seen our numbers go up lately too. That's amazing. So thank you, guys. All right, back to the TV show. So yeah, Kelsey kind of gave the overall story premise of the show. But it's pretty simple, and yeah, a lot of what I've seen in at least the first couple of episodes are a lot of allusions to Fallout 3 and Fallout 4. There are some Fallout 1 references, like some of the early game references in there as well, and I'll kind of get into those. But again, I'm not really going to get into too many specific spoilers. But yeah, this overall story is kind of similar to Fallout 3, where the dad goes missing and the protagonist heads out into the wasteland to find him. But yeah, the show opens up with pre-war, and Todd Howard or somebody said that we will get a backstory for the Vault Boy character, and we did. At least they kind of hinted at it at the beginning, where Cooper Howard is at a birthday party. He's an actor for spaghetti westerns, kind of like John Wayne or Ronald Reagan back in the day. And he's performing at a birthday party, and you got some guys kind of talking crap about how, he's like, oh, what's this big actor doing birthday parties now? What's going on here? Is he washed up? But he's with his daughter, and he's taking pictures with people, and they're like, hey, do the thumbs up, and he's like, nah, I don't do that. Because he's done it so many times. Everybody and their mother asks him to do the thumbs up. So, and then his daughter's like, well, why don't you do it? And he kind of gives the story about what it actually is. It's not actually a thumbs up. And this is what we as Fallout fans all kind of know, but maybe not the general public. So it's not actually a thumbs up. It's to measure just how close a nuclear explosion is. So, yeah, it does a really great job setting up the world. So if you're not familiar with what the Fallout universe is, it really it kind of lays it out for you. But yeah, it nails the retrofuturistic vibe of it, even at the beginning, with how the style of the house is, the music, the TVs, the radio. I mean, music, radio. But yeah, the music on the radio, the clothes that the people are wearing, the cars, everything feels like it is retrofuturistic. They nailed it. So right after he describes what the thumbs up is for, you see a flash of light, a blinding flash of light, and his daughter puts her thumb up, and she's like, hey, is this your thumb or mine? And Cooper kind of turns, gets a horrified look on his face, and yeah, that that was a crazy scene. And flash forward 219 years, and we see Lucy in the vault going through her special stats, which was kind of funny. Basically, they kind of lay out that at least there's some sort of cooperation between Vault 33 and Vault 32, but we don't really find out what what the whole picture is later on. Again, I'm not going to get into spoilers, but this is kind of when they set up what the Pip-Boy is, because she's talking to the council about her application for basically being wed off to somebody in Vault 32. And the council doesn't say a word. They just get into their Pip-Boys and give her answer right there, even though they're, 20 feet away. That was kind of funny. But yeah, I think that was kind of to set up what the Pip-Boy is and how important it is to Vault Dwellers. But yeah, then we get to meet the quote unquote members of Vault 32, and there's so much foreshadowing in this series, especially in the first couple of episodes. Especially like with this scene here, like there's so many hints that these people aren't who they say they are, and you really have to watch the show a few times to pick up on all of the subtle hints and foreshadowing that are in, just all the Easter eggs that are in this show. Like, there's so much that I missed with watching the first episode the first time, heading into like the raid that they do, because that's what it was. And a lot of my speculation from the trailers, like, I didn't realize that the people fighting were from two different vaults. I just thought that they were all members from Vault 33. So I thought maybe that kind of tied into what the experiment was. And in a way, I was kind of right, but I didn't know the whole picture. And that's a lot of, like, so many people gave, past judgment on the show before they'd even watched it. And, as Sam Roberts from the Not Sam podcast says, let them cook, because they cooked up one hell of a TV show. And this scene, or like the first episode, is a perfect example of that. The first couple, few episodes, like the whole show is fantastic, but they are so good at dropping little hints and Easter eggs along the way. So yeah, there's so many hints that these people are raiders, and a lot of it I missed. Again, I was sitting in with the Modus Files watch along, at least at the beginning and end, and I didn't notice this, but Chris Smith, one of the cast members on the Modus Files, pointed out that the people from Vault 32 didn't have Pip-Boys. Why didn't they have Pip-Boys? Because they weren't the original Vault 32 inhabitants. But yeah, they're like, when I was chatting with Dawn when we were doing our recording yesterday, as I'm recording this on Friday, she pointed out that the people from Vault 32 had horrible manners. Something else I wasn't really paying attention to. I noticed that there was something off when the guy that Lucy was married to, I want to say his name was Monty, strips naked in front of her. And a lot of people were probably noticing the guy's ass. I noticed all the scars on his body. I'm like, why does he have this huge ass scar on his side? Huge ass. Sorry, I'm leaving that in. Yeah, he had this really long and wide scar on the side of his body, and a lot of other places, like he had bullet wounds. And I'm like, okay, something's about to go down. And sure enough, after they get up, she notices after the kind of afterglow dies down, and goes for a machete. So yeah, but again, there's so much foreshadowing. Lee Moldiver, however you pronounce her last name, she and Overseer Hank notice, like, they know each other, and they kind of hinted at that, but you don't really find out what their connection is until later on in the show. She also looked at Lucy and said, "I know you look so much like your mother." How does she know her mother? Well, that all kind of gets explained. So let's talk about the other characters. There's the Ghoul. Obviously, that's Cooper Howard's character. So well done. And there's been a lot of debate in the fan community about the nature of ghouls. Do they all eventually go feral, or is there something else, something that kind of keeps some ghouls from going feral, whether it's biological or non, something else? We get a little bit of, I mean, maybe it's not flat out said, but we do kind of get a little bit of an answer to that, at least in some cases. The Brotherhood of Steel with Maximus wouldn't want to grow up in that environment, but that kind of led to how his personality is. He wanted to, like, he had aspirations of becoming a knight and just being the, quote pun intended, knight in shining armor for the wasteland. Excuse me while I take a little bit of a sip from my coffee here. So you kind of learn what it's like to grow up in that environment, and also maybe sometimes it's best not to meet your heroes. But that fight with the Yao Guai was great. Kind of recreated that with the Gato pub recently. That was a hell of a lot of fun. Always love hanging out with the Gatos. And yeah, that night in particular was a lot of fun. I loved Philly. Again, there's so many Easter eggs in that scene that you kind of have to watch it through a few times. Dog meat. There have been a lot of theories about dog meat in the series, and maybe we got an answer to that. But it is great how with the three different characters, they each have three distinct backgrounds, and you can kind of see how that plays into how different people view the wasteland. We have the naive vault dweller. We have somebody who's grown up in the wasteland, but under very specific and rigid, structured, that's the word I was looking for, circumstances. And then we have somebody who's always been around and has seen hell, and just you see the toll that takes on a person. Somebody who's seen what the world was and just what it's become. And, he kind of watched that process happen. Toward the end of the show, you kind of see him, find out what is going to happen. And again, we're not going to go into spoilers, but the council, the meeting that Vault-Tec had with other major world representatives. Again, apologies, I'm still kind of waking up. Words. He watched it happen in real time. Just the downfall of civilization, and I can't imagine what that's like. As much as our current world sucks sometimes, I always try to see it with rose-colored glasses. I always try to see the best in everything. And, I'm sure to an extent Cooper Howard did too for a while. But when you see him as the ghoul, you see him kind of beaten and broken down without any real will to live. Like, he probably didn't care if he went to sleep in that grave and never woke up. Which, yeah. Again, can't really imagine that. So, as far as the Fallout feel, I think they nailed it. And as Kelsey mentioned, the show is officially renewed for a season 2. And I can't wait. I was one of the people that complained about them dropping the whole show at once because, we had our own plans, as Kelsey said. We wanted to do this episode by episode as the show released, but those got squashed, obviously. And I knew, I wanted to take my time with it, but I also knew myself well enough that that wasn't going to happen. I watched it all within 24 hours. I finished it just about when, 24 hours after release. I watched 3 episodes the night it came out, and then the rest throughout the day, whether I was at home or at work on a break. It sucked me in, man. It was amazing. The story fits right in with the Fallout universe. I know there were some people who said it was inconsistent. I don't think so. I think that the things that people were complaining about before the show aired, most of that was unfounded. Like the Cyclops. Again, you have to watch the show to know what's going on. And, that Cyclops and the rest of the people in his vault, that was all explained. And I think it was explained in a way that made sense. The one thing that I will say that I do agree with is Maximus gliding down from that building top like Iron Man. I don't know of any set of power armor where you just glide softly to the ground like that. It's always a superhero landing. I will give people that. But the Cyclops, some of the other things I've seen people complaining about, like with specific characters, is ridiculous, guys. This is a world with, ghouls and all sorts of mutated things like that. Gulper. I was one of the people that were like, okay, that's not a Gulper. That gets explained as well, and I'm fine with it. It's not the Gulpers that we know from Fallout 4 or Fallout 76, but who cares? It's a different variant. Just watch the show, and a lot of this stuff will make sense. Sure, there are some other questions that come up that don't really get answered, but we have a season 2 on the way. So one more sip of my coffee here. So, just chill. It's fine. And I've seen people say, "Oh yeah, of course, Bethesda retconned Fallout New Vegas." Say you haven't watched the show in its entirety without saying you haven't watched the show in its entirety. That's all I'm going to say about that. But yeah, the audio, like the music, not just the music, but the audio. My friend Jessica Starr posted this. I think she posted this on Twitter. Go find the tweet where she said it's a lot better, or you hear a lot more if you wear headphones, and that's absolutely true. Like I said, a few of the episodes I watched at work with headphones, and you pick up so much more than you would if you didn't. So definitely watch the show. If you haven't watched it the first time with headphones, definitely watch it a second time with headphones. Like, I really need to go back and watch the first couple of episodes, especially with headphones. There's so many sounds that come straight out of the video games. And yeah, the music, oh my God, so well done. So many songs that are in the games, so many songs that aren't in the games but sound like they belong in the games. Like, there was a lot of Johnny Cash. And the placement of where the songs are with what's going on in the show, amazing. Like, perfect. It adds to the scenes so well. Let's see. Yeah, so as far as my overall rating, like I think I saw a video where IGN was telling Todd Howard himself that they gave the show a 9 out of 10. It gets a 12 out of 10, 15 out of 10, in my opinion. Like it's amazing. Like I can't wait to watch this show again. And yeah, I think that really sums it up for me. Like it's been awesome having Fallout become a lot more mainstream. As I said earlier, I know so many people who've never even really played video games that are talking about Fallout. So, yeah, I am going to hand this back over to Kelsey, and we will get into the nitty-gritty and a lot more spoilers when we sit down and talk together here in the next few days. So, until then, I will see you guys all in the Wasteland.
Thanks so much to Eric, as always. If you've made it this far in the episode, well done. Give yourself a pat on the back. I hope you enjoyed our thoughts on the show. Like I say, we're just kind of, this is the tip of the iceberg, if you like. We're going to have more to say, and I'm sure we'll keep saying more in future episodes as well. I mean, we have that future episode I mentioned. We've got another episode coming this week. As I've said, we're going to really get into some more talk about the lore, specific scenes, and all that kind of stuff. There's loads more to say, and I can't wait to have the face-to-face discussion with Eric about that. But I'm sure it won't be the last time we talk about the Fallout show in the future. Yeah, what else was there to say? I've reinstalled Fallout Shelter. I'm going to talk more about that on the next episode as well. There was an update to Fallout Shelter. We've got an update to Fallout 4 coming as well. There's probably going to be some more stuff to Fallout 76. I saw Todd Howard had that interview with IGN where he talked about, that they're still working on Elder Scrolls, but they're still working on Fallout 76. So there might be some recalibrated effort and resources back into 76 off the back of this show. Who knows? There's so much to think about and so much to talk about. And I've rambled enough today. I really appreciate everybody that's been listening. We had a spike of listens on our show in the past week. Thank you to those who are new to the show. Obviously, please leave us a review. Please check out the other episodes. I think we have almost 50 episodes now in total. Come and interact with us on Twitter at TFTW pod. And that's generally where you can find and interact with us. Obviously, we have the YouTube channel. Leave a comment there, like the videos. We put audio versions up there and our video versions when we do record a video one from time to time. Come and find me at K_D_B_ on Twitter, and Eric is at ENGold08, where we both share everything we do. And talk more about Fallout. Come and talk with us. Let us know your thoughts on the show. Yeah, you can probably hear by the sound of my voice, I'm deflating a little bit now, but in a good way. I feel like I've been holding in all these thoughts all week. I haven't really let on online at all how I feel about the show, but yeah, as you'll have heard, I'm very positive about it. What a moment this is for Fallout, right? This is really cool. Anyway, gonna wrap it up, guys. Like I say, come and follow us on the socials. Links are in the description of the podcast. Follow us on Spotify. Leave us a review, Apple Podcasts as well. A rating on Spotify. Everything you're supposed to do for the podcast. It really helps us. Very excited to welcome new listeners and new fans and continue the journey with our old listeners and old fans as well. Until the next episode coming very, very soon in just a few days. Stay safe out there, Wanderers.